blasting myself on cardio machines in the gym and then starving myself, like thinking that that was the way to do it. I lost a pound of weight, man, but you know, shortly after I lost it, I regained it all. It was just ended up being this yo-yo. It was constantly up and down. It wasn't a very sustainable way of doing things. Right, welcome back to the Fit Dad Revolution show, and today we're going to talk a little bit about me, but not from an egotistical standpoint, more to give you an understanding of how I've got to where I am now from a health and fitness perspective. Because one of the questions I get asked a lot by a lot of people is if I've always been fit and healthy. And you know, I think when we look at people that are, especially on social media these days, it's easy to look at people and just assume that that's how they've always been. You know, and then sometimes I think we can't relate to those people because we think, well, they don't know what we're going through. They don't know what we're struggling with. They've never been where I've been. And I wanted to kind of hop on today to give a bit of a backstory on my journey and what I kind of came through to get to this point. Because the truth is, I definitely wasn't always healthy, man. You know, growing up, I was always one of the fatter kids in the school. I was always a wee bit chunky at the school, which my mum, funnily enough, used to tell me was puppy fat. And it took a long time for that puppy fat to disappear, so I don't think she was telling me the truth. She told me it was puppy fat, and I believed it for such a long time, man. And you know, it was like even into my early, my mid-teens, I was like, oh, it's just puppy fat, it's puppy fat. How long can I hold on to that, man, really? But that story, that puppy fat story, I very quickly changed when I realised I was, you know, when I started getting into my 20s, my mid-20s, before I started to change, my late 20s is when I turned things around. I changed that, it's puppy fat, I changed that story from it's puppy fat to I'm big boned. It's in my genes, it's genetic, I've always been big, I've always been this way, I can't lose weight. And that was my story, that was what I would then tell people. Which is really a lot of shit, because you know, my mum and dad aren't what you would call fat people, they're not big people. So it's, you know, it definitely wasn't in my genes. That's not really how it worked with that, but you know, I had a terrible diet, and that's the truth. Now, was there some kind of handing down of that terrible diet from my parents? Yeah, probably. You know, they didn't understand nutrition, but they still don't, man. My mum, forever, when she talks about losing weight, she's, I'm going to cut out the bread. And it doesn't matter how many times I explain nutrition to her, she just doesn't get it. She's older now, to be fair, but, you know, they didn't have an understanding of nutrition when I was younger. So, you know, to pass on the best nutritional practices to me, they just couldn't do it. They'd done what they felt was right. It was that, you know, 3 square meals a day, which was, you know, mostly home cooked food, to be fair. It was all good, but you know, I was no stranger to the biscuit tin, and the biscuits just kept on coming, man. There was always a full biscuit tin in my house. You know, it didn't matter what was going on in life, there was always a full biscuit tin, and I just had easy access to that all the time. So biscuits and crisps and just shite food. Coca-Cola was my way of hydrating myself. I didn't drink any water, so I would drink bottles and bottles of Coca-Cola. You know, that was my life growing up. That was me growing up. That's, you know, and as much as they tried to enforce what they believed to be a healthy lifestyle on me, that, you know, I was clearly taking in too many calories, and I wasn't overly active either as a kid. You know, I started karate when I was 11, but before that, man, like, I couldn't run the length of my street without blowing out my arse, and that was me at like 10, 11 years old. I was, you know, I wasn't a terribly healthy, fit child. If my friends went away and ran anywhere, that was it. The game was a bogey for me. I couldn't keep up with them, so I'd have to go home. If they were running and like if you came into a kind of chase kind of thing, like game over, I'm going home. I couldn't keep up, so there was no point. You know what I mean? It was just yeah, I wasn't healthy as a kid. Now, when I started to get into my teenage years, obviously kind of alcohol and all that kind of stuff comes on. I discovered alcohol quite early, man, unfortunately, but not from I turned into an alcoholic at 12, but I certainly was drinking at that age. Like, you know, my first experience of drinking cider was along at a little gala quite close to where I live. And me and a few of my friends, we got some cider and got really drunk. You know, it would be a thing we would do every now and then. Oh, let's get drunk, it's good fun. You know, and their brothers would buy us some drink and whatever else. And but it wasn't like a massive feature of my life. It was just a thing we did. You know, we'd turn up to a school disco drunk and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't something until my late teens that I really kind of started to dive into that thing. Well, my mid-teens, about 15, 16, and then going into my later teens. When I turned 18, I got a job in a pub, which was maybe the worst thing ever. It was really good, man. It gave me a lot of life experience, a lot of different things, but it just gave me access to beer constantly, man. So I was drinking it a lot, man. It was like an every weekend, quite a lot of the times through the week as well. And it was around about that same time that I started to kind of discover drugs. You know, I quite liked popping the odd pill here and there. So, you know, from about maybe 19 onwards, I started kind of experimenting with that kind of stuff. But it was never a massive issue for me. It was never a big thing. It would be 1 or 2 here and there. that I would take at the weekends. I mean, it got to a point that I felt like I couldn't go out the weekends without being drunk or without having pills, so it probably was a bit of a problem. But it wasn't, you know, that I was able to. I felt like I was able to control it. And I would, you know, I'd get up and I'd go to my work through the week. Everything was fine. I would smoke. I smoked a lot of weed as well, like through the week. But again, that didn't massively impact me, other than the fact it made me hungry. So I would eat a lot of shit. So I'd put on even more weight. You know, the extra food combined with all the beer that I was drinking, it didn't do anything for my waistline. But I think it was probably around 2003. I was 23 years old that I started to get a bit more kind of heavily involved with the drug side of things, and it went from, you know, having 1 or 2 pills at the weekend sometimes to you know, an every weekend kind of thing, where I felt like I definitely had to be getting out my trees, regardless if I was working or not. I had to happen. And you know, one chance night out that we went on, you know, up until that point, I think I'd only had 3 pills in one night. But the party that we went to, the guys that were at that party were, you know, they were frequently taking 15 and 20 a night, and I got mixed up in that, and I ended up out for the whole weekend and took more drugs than I think I'd ever taken combined before that point. And it just opened up my eyes to a completely different way of life, a different way of doing things. Not in a positive perspective. I mean, there are positives to take from it. It definitely, I wouldn't change it, man, because it built a lot of who I am today. You know, going through that, it really taught me a lot about myself, and it developed my character. But you know, it's definitely not the path I would recommend to a lot of people. Yeah, go and just take 20 and 30 eckies every night and see how you get on with that. It's definitely not what I would recommend to people. But that became my lifestyle for, oh man, I think 2003 to 2006, I think, is when I kind of started to move away from that. I had to remove myself from the environment because I was just spiraling. It was, you know, it was getting out of control, where we were taking drugs on a Thursday night and, you know, something's finishing on a Tuesday morning. It was just, it was ridiculous. It wasn't the healthiest of lifestyles. The good thing from that is I did lose a bit of weight because I wasn't eating, but it definitely wasn't healthy. I was still drinking a lot, you know, but I lost a couple of jobs through it. You know, I almost lost my whole family because of it. But then when I moved away from that scene, I wasn't doing that quite as frequently. My weight ballooned, man. I started eating food up obviously more regularly. I wasn't out my tits every single weekend, so I started eating a lot more food, and my weight absolutely ballooned. So over the course of the next, what was that, 2006, I moved away. Probably the next 3 years, so 2009 is when I started to turn things around. Probably the next 3 years, I ballooned up to just over 17 stone, right, which was like, it was the heaviest I'd ever been. And man, I tried all the diets. I tried the shakes. I tried cutting food out. I tried to starve myself because I like not. When I say try to starve myself, in my head, I seen this thing of, you know, when I used to take drugs, I didn't eat. So and I lost weight. I was thin. I wasn't thin. I was skinny fat, man. I didn't have any muscle tone. I wasn't in good shape. I definitely wasn't fit. But I looked at it and went, do you know what, man? I lost a lot of weight doing that. I lost a lot of weight when I was doing that, so I could maybe take that same approach just without the drugs. I'll just not eat. Now, by that point, I was actually competing for karate. I started competing in 2006, which is kind of what encouraged me to move away from it, because I got a place in our national Scotland team. But I wasn't fit, man. I was really unfit. And if I had to do 2 or 3 matches back to back, I was fucked. Absolutely fucked. It was a real struggle for me. You know, that's when in 2009 we had a World Cup coming up, different things. I thought, you know, I need to get fit, man. I need to change the way I'm doing this. So I started blasting myself on cardio machines in the gym and then starving myself, like thinking that was the way to do it. I lost a pound of weight, man, but, you know, shortly after I lost it, I regained it all. It was just ended up being this yo-yo. It was constantly up and down. It wasn't a very sustainable way of doing things, because every time I starved myself, I'd end up absolutely like ravenous hungry, and then I'd have a massive big binge, so the weight would all rocket back on. It was an up and down horrible kind of procedure, and it took me a while, like even all the way through 2009, that was the year that I really lost weight, that I really kind of screwed the nut in a little bit. And, you know, while I did lose a lot of weight that year, I was always putting it back on. It was on, off. But it took me that year, towards the end of 2009, I decided to go back to college. And that's when I went and learned how to do what I'm doing now. I went into a course on fitness, health and exercise. And it was within there, we started doing the nutritional module, that I was looking, going, holy shit, man, I've been doing that all wrong. All right, and even now, when I look back to what I learned in the nutrition module, things I've learned now that are, you know, just on my own research, different things I've done, it's so much different. It's not what I would teach anybody now. But it certainly let me see that the approach I was taking to try and lose weight was definitely not the right way of doing things, and all I was doing was causing myself more damage. Like I say, I lost a lot of kind of muscle tone. I didn't have a great shape around me. I was trying to train my socks. I was trying to run all the time. I was trying to go to karate all the time. Then I started trying to go to the gym. My body broke. I got injured. I felt tired all the time. I felt burnt out. I didn't have a plan. I just didn't know what I was doing. I had no direction at all. I was just going in there and trying to wing it and thinking this must be the way to do it. I replaced the drugs and the drink, and I replaced that with going to the gym. Like that's like if I starve myself and don't eat food and just go to the gym, then that's how I'm going to get in great shape. You know, it didn't work, man. I was half-assing the workouts. I was tired all the time. I had no energy. I just, yeah. So while I'd stopped drinking and stopped taking drugs and I'd stopped smoking as well, I stopped smoking at the start of 2009. All of that's a positive step to make you more healthy. But the actions I then took, the obsessions I then replaced it all with, I was doing in a very unhealthy way. So I still wasn't healthy. It wasn't then until I learned, like I say, I went to college and I started learning how to do this stuff and started doing a bit of reading, a bit of research. I was like, oh shit, man, okay, I need to eat, but I need to eat the right foods. All right, I was trying to like starve myself to the point of like I'm oblivion, man. I was eating nothing but salad leaves. Like an interesting story actually to get, because I never used to eat veg when I was wee. I never used to eat veg. My first attempt at eating healthy was to put 2 or 3 spinach leaves on a ham and cheese and salt and vinegar crisp sandwich. That was my first attempt. So I need to eat more veg. Cool, I'll do that. So I had a ham and cheese and salt and vinegar crisp sandwich, and I put 2 leaves of spinach on each half. And that was my attempt to get more veg into myself, because I hated veg. It took a while to train myself into it. But then when I started to starve myself, my idea was if I just eat nothing but salad, if I just have that and put like just some chicken in it, then that'll do. And I done that for like, I didn't have breakfast, and I just had salad with a wee bit of chicken, like a wee bit of salt for a flavour, nothing else. It was fucking horrible. And then I did the same again for my dinner. And I done that non-stop, and as I say, I lost a pound of weight, but as soon as I got, like, you know, 3 or 4 weeks in, I was like, I'm fucking starving. So I inhaled about 6 takeaways and I ate the whole lot. Boom, weight would go firing back up and then up, down. So the measures I was taking were not healthy in any way, shape or form. So as I say, I had to go to college and I had to learn the right way of doing things. And once I learned the right way to do it, once I had a better understanding of nutrition and actually, like, you know, and so eating the right balance of foods, having a well-balanced breakfast, having a well-balanced lunch, having a well-balanced dinner, being sensible with my snacks, that put me on the right path to then start losing weight the right way. And obviously going to the gym, I was then able to, because I understood how to actually program properly, I was able to go in and program. Whereas previously, my idea going to the gym was do as many reps as I possibly could on every single machine in the gym, go around every single one, do it until my muscles cramp up and I can't do it anymore, move to the next one. And then as soon as I finished that with every single machine, I would then go on the cross trainer for 10 minutes and go as hard as I could in the cross trainer, onto the treadmill for 10 minutes and try and sprint as fast as I could on that, and then finish off in the row machine until I thought I was going to puke. And then I would go home and I would come back in and do exactly the same thing the next day. It was a disaster. It was all over the place. I had no idea what I was doing. Right, so once I learned then how to program properly and actually take some rest days, actually focus on building muscle, how to actually do it properly, you know, the different rep ranges that were involved in actually building muscle. When I was able to do that and, you know, come out and realise that cardio was not the best way to make it happen. Cardio was what was going to make me fitter, but it wasn't necessarily the best way to get the shape of body that I wanted to get. So I dialed back on the cardio a little bit. I changed what I was doing from the gym perspective and started kind of following a more structured plan. And once I put those things into place, it then put me on a path where I started really seeing a change in the shape of my body. I felt fitter than ever before. I felt healthier than ever before. I was actually in a really good place. I had never experienced this before. It was new to me, because before then I was always the fat kid. I was always the fat friend, and I still, in my head, I probably identified with that a little bit, to the point that the change in my diet and all that kind of stuff took probably a swing in the opposite direction, where I felt that I couldn't have a Mars bar, I couldn't have a biscuit, and if I had one, I would just feel like shit. I was like, oh, I can't believe I've just ruined all my progress. I can't believe I've done that. And I would then go and binge, and I would eat loads and loads of shit. So even when I'd got myself on the right path, in my head I still wasn't in the right place. It could have been really easy for me to slip, because after I did that then big binge and I'd stuffed my face with shit, I would then go back and go back to the whole gym thing. I need to go and run now. I need to go. That mentality was still there. So I had to really work on my mindset and realise that it doesn't matter if you have a Mars bar or a bag of crisps or a Chinese takeaway. It doesn't make any difference. That one thing's not going to ruin all my progress. And it took me a long time to develop that. Like the training side of things I was able to dial in relatively quickly. The nutrition side of things, from eating more balanced food in terms of like healthy food, was able to get dialed in more quickly. what took the time was getting my mindset around about the fact I could still have a takeaway. If I did want to have a beer, I could still have a beer. You know, it was that whole kind of mindset switch of that's not going to ruin my progress. What will ruin my progress is if I go absolutely bananas and stuff my face full of that shit for days and days on end. But that took a long time. That was probably the hardest part to get. And it's still a bit that still trips me up to this day. Like if I have if I have a bit of overconsumption, I can still sometimes slip into that, oh man, I shouldn't have done that, like, oh man, and I've got to catch myself, but you know, it's not really an issue, man, it doesn't really matter, just get back on track. It's, you know, it's still there, that little fat kid inside is still lingering away somewhere. So yeah, so losing all that weight, man, it was it was a journey, man. It took time, it took a lot of time, and I actually, you know, that was probably 2009 is when I started, and then I left uni I left college and uni in 2010, 11, 12, maybe 12, I think. Excuse me. And then shortly after that, I got injured. I blew my hip out and I couldn't train at all for almost 2 years, man. And I had a big slip. I went back in. I was inhaling boxes of chocolates and eating takeaways. I thought, what's the point, man? There's no point in this. I couldn't train, so I couldn't do anything. All I could do was glute bridges on the floor. I had to lie on my back and just push my bum up in the air. That was all I was allowed to do because my hip injury was so bad. And so, you know, I had that slip. I went straight back into the old mindset. And well, what's the point in this? I'll just have a couple of chocolates. Then 2 turned into 10. Then fuck, I've eaten that now. I might as well eat the whole box. And I'm not talking like a box this size. I'm talking about the big boxes of Rosies, the big tins. I would demolish one of them easily myself, no problem, sitting playing Batman on the PlayStation. And again, then I had to give myself a shake and go, what are you doing, man? Like, you can't maybe go and exercise the way you would normally, but you can walk. So I then made walking my thing. Like, you know, I couldn't train the way I wanted to train, but I could go and walk. And I used to go out for walks every single day and, you know, try and kind of increase my time and get a better time when I was walking. I still had that competitive edge, that competitive mindset, that I wanted to get better, I wanted to improve, I wanted to be faster. And I would make little games for myself. I'd see people away in the distance that were close to a building or close to a lamppost or something of those lines, and I'd set myself a challenge that I'd have to get past those people. By the time I get to that 15th lamppost up there, I'm going to be past those people. And I would walk like an absolute maniac to get past them. And I think sometimes people must have looked at me and thought, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Because when I walked past them, I had this manic look in my eye. I was going, hiya, you know, and like in their head, they've no idea what's just happened. But in my head, I've just won a race. So to them, they're like, all right, mate, like, looking at me like some kind of weirdo. When I'm just powering past them like some kind of Olympic speed walker. And in my head, I'm sitting there going, yes, get in. They have no idea what's happened, but I've got a moral victory. So, so yeah, I think this is a bit of a shorter episode, but it's just kind of really to hopefully give you a bit of insight into my life and what I kind of went through. You know, for a long period in my life, man, you know, especially through that sort of 2003 to 2006 period where I was getting on it every weekend. I actually loved that period for a time. And then it got to a point that I was doing what I was doing to mask how I felt, because I hated the way that I looked. Like, even though I lost weight, I was still skinny fat, I still had a belly, I still had man tits. I hated the way that I looked, I hated the way that I felt, I hated the person that I was at that time. And I used to go and take drugs to mask that feeling because I didn't like being that person. Nobody would have known that because I was always the life and soul of the party. But at that time, I thought, man, this is how my life is now, man. This is just my life. And, you know, it wasn't until that 2006 came in, I moved away from the environment. I lost another job, like, funnily enough, because I was a reprobate. I lost another job and moved away from the house that I was living in with my friends that were all in the same mindset as me. And I moved away back home. I moved back in with my parents. And I still had the odd night out with those guys. I still went back here and there, but taking myself out of that environment was a massive change for me. It was a massive step in the right direction. And not because I didn't like the people or anything, but I couldn't, if I was still in that environment, I would have still been doing that stuff. I had to come away from it. And, you know, that got me back into my karate training. I then got selected for the squad. You know, started taking that a bit more seriously. I took the energy I was given to all that stuff and put it into something else. And I think that was probably the first pivotal turning point in my life. Even though at that time I still wasn't happy with my body shape, especially since I started putting a lot of weight back on, I was still drinking a lot. I just wasn't taking drugs as much. I was still drinking a lot, and again, I think it was to mask how I was feeling. So I was still going out, still getting drunk, but I was training more. So I kind of replaced one vice with another and used the training to kind of move forward. So that was probably the biggest turning point. And then 2009 is where things really started to switch. But that period was rough. It was definitely a rough time, mentally, physically, emotionally. You know, I think 2009, the thing that really was the biggest catalyst for the change for me. I actually had a bit of a mental breakdown. I broke down with my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife. But we broke up. and that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. You know, I didn't like where I was. I didn't like where my relationship was. We were arguing a lot. I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy with the job I had. Everything was just like, and I had a really bad victim mentality. I was like, oh, why me, why me, why me? And believe it or not, the thing that really kind of turned that part around is my mum gave me a video of a film called The Secret, which I watched. I took it all on board. I was like, holy shit, man, this is talking to me. But I took it a bit too literally, and I started thinking that all I had to do was sit cross-legged and sit with my eyes shut and visualise things that were all going to happen in my life. There is an element of that, I think, is truth. Like, you can visualise things and get an idea of what's going to happen in your head, but you still need to do the work. You still have to put the work and take the action, all right? Like, it doesn't just come to you as if by some kind of magic. But that was another big turning point, and that's what then led me to kind of the changes I just spoke about in 2009. But yeah, so I digress. I just went round in a big circle there. So the whole point of this podcast today was just to give you a bit of an insight, hopefully, so you can get more of an understanding of why I do what I do. You know, I started this business because I remembered how I felt going through, you know, everything that I was going through at the time, and I see so many other people that are just struggling with their health and their fitness. They're hopping from diet to diet and thinking that that's the answer. They're going out and they're running for hours and hours on end, and then they're coming back and they've not made any progress, and they don't know why, right? Because, you know, as far as the health industry or the diet industry is concerned, they're doing all the right things. They're buying into the diets. They're doing the Slimming World shakes. They're doing the fasting. They're jumping on YouTube and they're checking all these different things. Oh, you know, I'm not eating that much food, but that stuff's just keeping you stuck. Right, and I can say that from first-hand experience, man. And truth be told, I'm actually really grateful for that whole period of my life. Like I said before, man, the whole drugs thing I wouldn't change, because it's definitely made me who I am today. The whole weight loss side of things, where I was weight loss wise, like I was really struggling with all that kind of stuff. I'm so grateful that I went through all of that. I'm so grateful that I went through being fat and getting bullied at school for being that overweight kid. I'm so grateful that I went through all of that. It was shit at the time. It was really shit at the time. Even going out and taking drugs, like I say, man, I slipped into a big depression going through all that period. It was shit at the time. Taking drugs, almost losing my family, all of that, it was shit at the time. But there were so many lessons, and I didn't see them at that time. It's only been through kind of getting older and, dare I say, potentially wiser, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, all right, but getting that little bit wiser that I can now look back and say, holy shit, man, I learned so much growing up through that whole period, and that's what's allowed me to do now what I do now. And, you know, I can relate so much when people come to me and tell me that they've tried different diets, they've tried this, they've been stuck for all their life. They feel like it doesn't matter what they do, they can't lose weight. I can relate to all of that, because I was that man. I was that man. I was stuck in that mindset for a long time, and it took a lot of work to get me back out of it. But, you know, on that note, man, I don't want to kind of end that as a depressive thing, saying, oh, it's going to take a lot of work, oh, it's going to be hard. It is going to take a lot of work, but here's the thing, man. Once you have the right systems in place, the right process in place, it actually happens so much faster than you would think. You know, if you've got a lot of weight to lose, man, you're not going to lose it overnight. You're just not. You know, I was like 4 stone I've lost, man. I was just over 17. I'm sitting just over 13 now. That's 4 stone of a difference, man. That's a big chunk of weight. You know, if you've got more than that to lose, that's going to take time. It's going to take a good bit of time. But with that being said, you can see progress relatively quickly once you have the right steps in place. All right, once you start doing the right things, you know, and I speak about them quite a lot. A couple of episodes back, I spoke about how to lose 20 pounds, even if you're strapped for time. So if you've not listened to that episode, I'd highly recommend you go and listen to it. It really breaks it down for you and walks you through what you need to do in order to start losing some weight. You know, the right way, not with crash dieting or stupid stuff that's not going to serve you. How to actually do it the right way, because once you've got the right way of doing things, it makes it so much easier for you to actually start seeing progress. But not progress that's going to wane after a week or two, progress that lasts. All right, but the key to progress that lasts is you have to last the distance. You have to keep on going. All right, there were so many times when I was struggling, trying to lose weight, jumping on diets, doing things, and so many times I wanted to quit. When I got injured, I almost threw in the towel. I was like, what's the point of me doing this, man? Why? I'm getting injured all the time. Why am I doing this? But I had to kind of really push and drive myself through that to get me to this point that I'm at now. Right? And all of that allowed me to build my mindset, build my body even further, do things a little bit differently, change the way that I train, change the way that I eat, and just change the way that I do things. All right? Because once you start changing the way you do things, that's when other things in your life start to change. If you just do the same shit over and over and over again, like, guilty, I've done that, I've been there, still do it sometimes. All right? If you still do that, if you do the same shit over and over again and expect a different result, you'd be as well just banging your head against the wall, all right? Because it's not going to get you anywhere, all right? If you want a different result, you need to be doing something a little bit different. That's what's going to get you to where you want to be, all right? Anyway, listen, I hope you got some value from this, man. I hope you can, you know, if you can relate to this story in any way, if you can listen to what I've just said, and it relates to your story, your life, then I'd love to know, man. Just drop me a little comment down below. I don't know, I'm still getting up to speed with this podcast stuff. I don't know if you can drop comments on podcasts or not. If you can't, then cool. Don't drop a comment because you can't do it. Maybe drop me a message, man. Jump over to Instagram, send me a message, let me know, you know, where you're at. If it's still something you're struggling with, let me know, and I'm happy to shoot some training your way to help you kind of overcome whatever it is that you're stuck with, whatever it is you're struggling with. So yeah, so shoot me a little message on Instagram. If you're watching on YouTube, drop me a little comment down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all that good shit, and let's get this message out to more people. And just know that you're not alone when you're going through this. All right, it doesn't matter how many years you've been struggling, doesn't matter how stuck you think you are, doesn't matter how much you think you can't lose weight. You're not alone in this. There are other people that have been there that understand what you're going through, and you absolutely can make a difference in your life. All right, you just need to change the way you do things. And I really would love to be able to help you do that. So yeah, that's us for this one. Please get in touch if you need some help, some guidance, some support. Happy to help. But until then, we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.